Hi, and thank you for tuning in to Noir Histoire. I'm Natasha, and in this episode, I'll be sharing what I've learned about Edmonia Lewis. Born on July 4th, 1844, died on September 17th, 1907, nationality American, notable sculptor. 1844 is considered to be the year of Edmonia Lewis's birth, but beyond that, many of the details of her early life vary. It's believed that Lewis might have chosen to change, embellish, or withhold the details of her early life based on who she was sharing them with. Lewis was her parents' second child and was either born in Ohio or in upstate New York near Albany in what's now Rensselaer. Her father, Samuel Lewis, was a free black man from the Caribbean who earned a living as a valet. Her mother, Catherine, was a Canadian woman of African and Ojibwe descent, Native American. Catherine was creatively inclined and made cultural crafts for sale, which would later inspire Lewis. Unfortunately, both of Lewis's parents died before she reached the age of 5. Lewis and her older brother Samuel went to live with their mother's sisters near Niagara Falls. She was immersed in the culture of her mother's tribe. This included living off the land and making cultural crafts for sale as her mother had done. Samuel was one of the lucky people to actually become wealthy during the gold rush. He generously provided the means for his younger sister to obtain a quality education. Lewis attended schools in upstate New York as well as Baltimore, Maryland, before enrolling at Oberlin College's preparatory school and later the college itself. Oberlin was regarded as a progressive school, as it was one of the first to admit both female and non-white students. Lewis's time at Oberlin remained relatively positive as she excelled the first 3 years. Yet even in this progressive for the time environment, racism still managed to mar the experience. Female students were put in a different track than that of male students, but most notably was an attack that Lewis suffered. In 1862, Lewis was accused of poisoning 2 roommates after they became ill from drinking spiced wine that she'd prepared. Lewis was allowed to remain free while the investigations and proceedings took place, and the local press didn't immediately report on the incident. Some locals were angered by the schooling court allowing time for due process rather than immediately punishing Lewis. An outraged mob of local white men abducted Lewis when she was leaving home one winter night. The men took Lewis to a field where they savagely attacked her. Almost beaten to death, Lewis was abandoned in the field. Proceedings were delayed by Lewis needing time to recover from her very serious injuries. Ultimately, Oberlin found Lewis innocent, and while she was also formally charged and prosecuted in court, Lewis was found legally innocent as well. Yet the racially motivated ill treatment and harassment continued. The following year, Lewis was accused of stealing art supplies from Oberlin. Some sources state that she was also accused of providing assistance to a burglar. Eventually, Lewis left Oberlin without graduating, though it's unclear if this was her choice or the school's. With help from her brother and a letter of recommendation from the Reverend who provided her with housing at Oberlin, Lewis moved to Boston. Intent on becoming an artist, Lewis began studying under the sculptor Edward Brackett. Naturally talented, Lewis's skills developed quickly despite having received relatively minimal training. She was soon able to earn money for herself by creating medallions, busts, and photographs. Having been welcomed into the local abolitionist community, some of her subjects were prominent figures in the abolitionist movement. Lewis also helped to raise money for black regiments during the Civil War. Some of the pieces she created brought her attention and helped generate publicity. Using some of the money she earned, Lewis visited London, Paris, Florence, and Rome. She would end up spending much of her career in Rome. This was because, despite her obvious talent, Lewis being black, female, and single limited her opportunities in America. She also wanted to be known for her talent as a sculptor first, rather than being noted as a black female sculptor. Lewis found a welcoming expat community of artists, as well as opportunities to learn and work while in Rome. She differed from many other artists by creating her marble sculptures from start to finish rather than hiring carvers. This was in part to reduce costs, but also to maintain creative control and avoid attempts to discredit her talent. The local press took notice, and Lewis's studio eventually became a popular stop for visiting Americans. Despite living in Europe, Lewis continued to create pieces based on abolitionists. On occasion, Lewis returned to America to raise money by selling her art. Her work continued to focus on abolitionists, indigenous Americans, religion, and nature. Her most notable work, The Death of Cleopatra, a 3,000-pound marble sculpture, was displayed at the Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, as a Black woman, Lewis's work was still regarded with little respect in America. The Death of Cleopatra remained unsold after the exhibition and would be mostly forgotten until its rediscovery in the 1980s. It was found covered with graffiti and paint and is one of the few works created by Lewis that is known to still exist. While it seems that Lewis continued to work for some time, little is known about her later life. Lewis died on September 17, 1907, with her burial site unknown, at least at that time. A historian found her unmarked grave in London in 2012. Edmonia Lewis is interred in St. Mary's Roman Catholic Cemetery. Thanks for tuning in. Show notes and sources are available on the Noir Histoire website via the link in the episode description. I'm working on creating downloadables and infographics, so keep an eye on the website. These Black History Facts are released every Wednesday, so if you enjoyed this episode and want more, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and check out my Black History Facts playlist.